California Psychics.
Now here's a highlight from Coast to Coast AM on iHeartRadio.
And welcome back to Coast. George Noory back with Alan Collinge. Alan, what do we say to the few proponents of student loans who say to you, nobody forced the students to borrow the money?
Yeah, I get that question all the time, George. And I can only say that, again, these are not loans like any other loan that people may take out. The absence of those consumer protections that I've mentioned, that is never made clear to the borrowers while they're in school. They have no idea that, unlike all other loans, these loans don't have bankruptcy rights, don't have statutes of limitations. They're really walked into these things like sheep to a slaughter.
And they're easy loans, too, aren't they? They're easy loans to obtain.
Yeah, there's no underwriting for these loans. The only underwriting is, did you get accepted into the college or not? And so, the numbers are just outrageous. We're seeing some colleges taking in, $500 million, even more, close to $1 billion in some cases. It's just easy money for the colleges, and the government is basically like a broken slot machine or a broken ATM machine. And at the end of the day, it's the students that wind up with these debts. And I'll tell you, George, we have some stories that would just blow your mind. There's a woman in California. She originally borrowed $25,000 back in the 90s. She has repaid over $100,000 on these loans.
Oh, my God. On a $25,000 debt?
On a $25,000 debt. And the kicker is that currently she still owes $130,000. So these are hugely negatively amortizing loans, which is illegal in many states, but because they're federal loans, they get away with it apparently. But this is the way that works. Throwing loans, like most lenders do not make money on defaults, right? It's like the worst thing for a lender.
Right.
Account.
They're lucky to get 100% on the dollar.
Oh, they will. Yeah. Credit cards are thrilled to get back even 10 cents on the dollar on a defaulted account. Well, many years and decades of White House budget data shows that the federal government is getting back well over 100 cents on the dollar for these defaulted loans. And in more recent years, because the federal government took over the entire lending system where the government now makes the interest on the loans, defaulted loans are massively profitable for the federal government. And so these are things that kids don't know going in before they sign for the loans. And, increasingly there's a relatively new loan product, these so-called Parent Plus loans, where the parents can borrow unlimited amounts to cover the cost of their kids' college. And the Parent Plus loans are every bit as predatory as all other student loans. And so it's just tragic what we're seeing these things do to not only people, but increasingly their families.
Alan, if you had your wish list to do anything you wanted with student loans, what would you do?
Well, the first thing that absolutely has to happen, George, is constitutional bankruptcy rights, as they exist for all other loans, have got to be returned to student loans. It's just got to happen. And
not that a student wants to declare bankruptcy, but you just want to give them that option, right?
Yeah, they've got to have the leverage of bankruptcy. It's not that everybody will run out and file. Nobody wants to. But not having that protection in place, it causes just the worst sort of vicious predatory behaviors on the part of the lenders. They're fish in a barrel. And so that baseline right has got to be returned to student loans. And, beyond that, the lending system is the numbers are just so outrageous at this point. I really think the president or the secretary of education, they are going to have to cancel broad swaths of this debt. How much, I don't know, certainly more than half. But this is where we're at. The government should have never been allowed to get into the lending business. Congress deserves a huge amount of blame, both Republicans and Democrats. Joe Biden, for example, he was a surprisingly key senator back in the 1970s when they first started nicking away the bankruptcy rights from student loans. And despite all the rhetoric that you hear where he's, bragging about canceling loans now, the fact of the matter is that structurally the lending system remains as predatory, as hyperinflationary, and out of control as it ever has.
Is it going to be a presidential issue in 24?
Well, I think it has to be. There are over 50 million student loan borrowers out there in the country, 43.4 million federal student loan borrowers.
And they all vote.
With 80% of them not paying now, 85%, if not 90%, being hopelessly underwater on their loans, these people vote. 40 million distressed student loan borrowers is, nearly enough to elect a president. And so it kind of has to be. And, right now the Republicans are, quite frankly, I'd say they've been played for fools by the Democrats. The rhetoric on the Democrat side makes it sound like they are, on the side of the borrowers, but really that's not true. But on the other side, the rhetoric coming from the Republicans, they're really just wagging their finger at the borrowers, and that certainly isn't getting them any votes. So right now, I'd say the Democrats have really managed to sort of snooker the Republicans on this issue. And it's really too bad because this is, the worst big government problem that you can point to. Southern red states like Texas and Florida, the entire South really, are the worst hurt states in the nation. It should not be a partisan issue at all, George. It's really too bad the way Washington turns these, nonpartisan issues into partisan footballs. And it's just so damaging.
Alan, do you blame the schools or colleges for any of this?
Oh, I absolutely do. The colleges have been sitting in the catbird seat on this. And I'll tell you, George, last congressional session, there was a very good bankruptcy bill that had bipartisan support. And at the very last minute, the colleges came in very quietly but very firmly, and they put their thumb on the scales, and they killed this legislation that would have returned bankruptcy rights to the loans, and that also would have put the colleges on the hook to reimburse the federal government, not a huge amount, but a non-trivial amount in the case of a bankruptcy discharge. This is very good legislation. It would have allowed for the stabilizing of the lending system, and the colleges killed it. And so the colleges are really a dark force behind the scenes here, and I can only say that they really need to be taken to task.
What are tenured professors earning in college these days? Do you know?
Oh, tenured professors do quite well, but the people really doing it's kind of a rich man, poor man thing at colleges. You've got a few tenured professors that make large amounts. You have college presidents that make just exorbitant amounts. But most of the teaching goes on at the adjunct level. So you've got a whole other tier of professors, and they don't make much at all. In fact, many of them wind up on public assistance of one sort or another, and they're paid essentially very, very little, I'll just say. When you're not a tenured professor, you really you're the slave rowing the oars under the boat, and you get not much more than to what you need to feed yourself with.
We've all been there. In the line at the grocery store, waiting for your latte at the coffee counter.